Dawn breaks cold over the English Channel. The sea churns beneath grey skies, the horizon pulsing with thunder. It is June 6th, 1944 D-Day. Through the mist, landing craft push toward the Normandy coast. Inside one of them, a young medic braces himself against the metal hull. 21-year-old Waverly B. Woodson Jr. of the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion clutches his medical kit, praying the engines will hold. The men around him are silent, faces pale, eyes fixed on the shoreline where German fortifications wait like open jaws. The ramp drops, gunfire tears through the air. Woodson leaps into the surf and is thrown down by an explosion. Shrapnel slices through his leg and side. Blood seeps into the cold seawater, but he does not stop. Crawling through waves, he drags the wounded ashore, sets broken limbs, restarts failing hearts. Hours blur into a haze of screams and smoke. His own wounds throb with every movement, yet he refuses evacuation. 30 hours later, he will have saved more than 200 men, and history will almost forget his name. The wind over Normandy carries the echo of his courage into a world that was not yet ready to see him. He was a medic, a soldier, and a man fighting two wars at once. It all began long before that morning on Omaha Beach. Before Waverly Woodson's boots touched the sands of Normandy, the world had already been reshaped by war. By 1944, Europe was in ruins. Hitler's armies still held France, and the Allied command was preparing the greatest amphibious invasion in history, Operation Overlord. The goal: break the Atlantic Wall and open a Western front to liberate Europe. But behind the grand strategy, another quiet battle was being fought, one inside the ranks of the United States Army. It was a segregated force. More than 1 million African Americans served during World War II, yet they were confined mostly to labor and support roles. The official belief, ingrained into the military structure, was that black soldiers were unfit for combat leadership. They loaded ammunition, cooked meals, built airstrips, and manned supply lines. Few were allowed near the front. Waverly B. Woodson Jr. was born in Philadelphia in 1922. The son of a postal worker, he studied biology at Lincoln University and hoped to become a doctor. When the war came, he enlisted, determined to serve his country despite its prejudice. The army placed him in the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion, one of the few black units assigned to participate directly in the Normandy invasion. The 320th trained at Camp Tyson, Tennessee, the only barrage balloon training center in the U.S. There, men learned how to launch massive hydrogen-filled balloons tethered with steel cables. Their mission was to protect Allied ships and troops from low-lying German aircraft. But Waverly, with his background in medicine, was assigned as a medic, a rare role for a black soldier in a combat-related unit. At Camp Tyson, the men of the 320th endured grueling drills under southern heat, and the constant reminder that their uniform did not shield them from racism. They could die for their country, but they couldn't eat in the same mess halls as white soldiers. Still, they trained with precision. The officers who led them, mostly white, came to respect their discipline even if official recognition lagged behind. By early 1944, the Allied command under General Dwight D. Eisenhower finalized plans for the invasion. The 320th was to land on Omaha and Utah beaches, following the first assault waves. Their role: to raise the barrage balloons once the beachhead was secured, deterring German strafing runs. But the sea, the weather, and the ferocity of German fire would shatter those plans. In late May 1944, the men crossed the English Channel to southern England, where they were briefed and assigned to landing craft. Woodson, promoted to corporal, boarded an LCT, a landing craft, tank alongside engineers and infantry. His medical kit was stocked with morphine, sulfur powder, bandages, and plasma units. He knew he would be under fire, but he didn't yet know that his station would shift from healing to survival. The night before D-Day, the channel swelled with wind and rain. More than 5,000 ships crowded the water, carrying over 156,000 troops toward occupied France. In the dark, Woodson wrote a short note in his pocket Bible. He did not know if he would live to read it again at 5:30 a.m. on June 6th. As the landing craft approached Omaha Beach, German guns opened fire. Shells tore through the formation. One struck near Woodson's craft, killing several men instantly and wounding him in the leg and back. His blood filled his boot, but he refused to turn back. The boat's ramp fell, and the first men waded into a storm of bullets. The 320th's mission to deploy barrage balloons would have to wait. On that deadly stretch of coastline, their survival became the mission itself. And in the chaos of that morning, one medic's determination would transcend every line the world had drawn between courage and color. The story of Waverly Woodson unfolds through more than a single lens. It is human, tactical, technological, hierarchical, and moral, each angle revealing another layer of his impossible courage on Omaha Beach. The *** human ** angle begins in the mud and blood of Normandy. Woodson was not a general or a hero forged by fame. He was a young man from Philadelphia, raised on quiet discipline and the conviction that every life mattered even when his own was slipping away. His training had prepared him for battlefield medicine, not for facing death hundreds of times in one day. Yet there, among the shattered landing craft, he made a simple choice, repeated over and over: to keep going. He bandaged wounds, performed amputations, and revived soldiers pulled from the surf. He never asked for thanks. He later said, "I was just doing my job." But that understatement concealed a truth. He embodied the ideal every army claims to fight for: selflessness. The ** tactical ** angle explains why his actions mattered beyond medicine. The 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion had a specific mission: to deploy protective balloons against German aircraft. But at Omaha Beach, tactics disintegrated under the sheer violence of German defenses. The first waves were decimated, commanders were dead or scattered, units broke apart. Amid the confusion, Woodson and his team improvised. The beach, meant to be secured within an hour, became a death zone for almost the entire day. By stabilizing the wounded and preventing panic, Woodson gave fragmented platoons a fighting chance to reorganize. Every soldier he saved could fire, move, or signal, and that ripple of survival shaped the tenuous bridgehead the Allies fought to hold. The ** technological ** side of his struggle lay in the crude instruments of wartime medicine. A field medic's bag in 1944 contained morphine syrettes, sulfur powder to fight infection, bandages, and plasma bottles, precious few tools between life and death. There were no helicopters, no quick evacuations. Each man Woodson treated had to be dragged from surf to sand, from sand to relative cover. His own wounds were bleeding freely, yet he used his medical kit, methodically sterilizing scalpels in seawater, cutting through clothing stiff with salt and blood, using torn shirts when bandages ran out. This was the front line of military medicine at its rawest. It was not science, it was endurance, guided by the fragile promise that one more life could still be saved. The ** leadership * perspective reveals the structure that surrounded him. In a segregated army, valor was measured unevenly. Black units were commanded mostly by white officers. Heroism from African American troops was often minimized, their reports dismissed, their recommendations for medals delayed or lost. Woodson's commanding officer noted his exceptional bravery and submitted him for the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest honor. Somewhere between the front and the War Department, the paperwork vanished. In 1944, that was not a clerical error, it was systemic bias. Yet within his unit, leadership meant something else. It meant the quiet authority of example. Men followed Woodson's steadiness not because of his rank, but because he never faltered, even bleeding through his uniform. Finally, the ** moral * dimension casts his story in sharp relief. The United States sent black men to fight for freedom abroad while denying them equality at home. They stormed beaches in a war against tyranny, then returned to segregated neighborhoods and restricted opportunities. Woodson's sacrifice revealed a painful contradiction. that democracy's defenders could still be denied its full promise. Yet his actions transcended bitterness. He saved white and black soldiers alike, without hesitation, in the face of prejudice that refused to see him as their equal. His story stands as both indictment and inspiration, a testament that true courage often appears where recognition does not. By the time the guns began to fall silent that night on Omaha Beach, Waverly Woodson's resolve had already become legend among those who lived because of him. But his greatest test, the moment where Will met exhaustion, was yet to come. The morning that began with thunder and fear became a crucible of endurance. When Waverly Woodson crawled onto Omaha Beach, he was already bleeding from shrapnel in his thigh and back. The sand was alive with fire bullets snapping above the surf, mortars churning the shallows, men falling before they could even lift their rifles. The tide carried in bodies, broken helmets, twisted rifles. It was not a battlefield, it was chaos incarnate. Woodson found shelter behind a steel obstacle half, buried in sand. Around him, dozens of wounded men cried out. His training took over. He cut open uniforms, sprinkled sulfur powder into gaping wounds, and pushed morphine into trembling arms. A shell detonated nearby, throwing sand over his patients. He wiped the grit from their faces and kept working. Keep breathing. He told them, though his own breaths came ragged through pain. Hours passed unnoticed. He splintered shattered bones with rifle stocks and driftwood, used belts for tourniquets, pressed bandages into bullet holes that would not stop bleeding. The surf turned red, and still he worked. Every time he lifted his head, machine gun fire tore through the air inches above. He was hit again by fragments, but he refused to stop. The medics who survived later said it seemed he could not be killed. At one point, he pulled 4 men from the water, dragging them past floating wreckage and mines. 1 had drowned, 3 lived because of him. When plasma ran out, he improvised using seawater to clean wounds, bits of uniform to bind them shut. A nearby explosion tore through a landing craft, throwing burning fuel across the beach. Woodson threw himself over a patient to shield him from the flames. For 30 straight hours, he never left the sand. His hands blistered and blackened from salt and blood. His leg throbbed with each step. He lost track of time. Day bled into night. Around him the battle raged, engineers clearing obstacles, infantry pushing inland, smoke drifting like fog. In the dim light, Woodson moved among the wounded like a phantom, giving them what little comfort he could. "You'll make it," he whispered to one man missing half a leg. That soldier lived. By the second dawn, exhaustion overwhelmed him. He had treated over 200 soldiers, some American, some British, even a few German prisoners. His own blood loss had become dangerous. Finally, as a medic from another unit arrived, Woodson collapsed beside the same steel obstacle where he had first found cover. He was carried unconscious to a hospital ship offshore. Doctors aboard were stunned that he had survived. One wrote in the log that Woodson had performed beyond conceivable human endurance. Yet when he woke in the ship's ward, his first question was not about medals or recognition. He simply asked, "Did we take the beach?" They had. Barely. Omaha was secure, and the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion, the only black combat unit to land that day, had done its part under relentless fire. But for Waverly Woodson, victory was only temporary. The war for acknowledgement was still ahead. When Waverly Woodson regained consciousness aboard the hospital ship *SSLSD 92*, the invasion was still raging behind him. The wounded filled every bunk, the air thick with disinfectant and the smell of burned metal. He was pale from blood loss, his leg bandaged, fragments of shrapnel still embedded in his side. The doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. But luck had little to do with it. Endurance had carried him further than medicine ever could. Word of his actions reached his commanders almost immediately. Officers on Omaha Beach filed reports describing a black medic who had treated hundreds of men under fire, refusing evacuation despite his wounds. One captain recommended him for the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second, highest decoration for valor. Others supported a further nomination for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork was forwarded through the chain of command. Then silence, in the bureaucratic labyrinth of wartime Washington, records vanished or were quietly set aside. The military's segregation policies still held firm. No African-American soldier had yet received the Medal of Honor for World War II, a reflection not of absence of heroism, but of a system unwilling to see it. When the Army reviewed award recommendations later that year, Woodson's name was missing. He was instead awarded the Bronze Star and a Purple Heart Honors of Distinction, but not of equivalence to his sacrifice. After the war, Woodson returned to civilian life with quiet humility. He rarely spoke of Normandy. He resumed his studies, became a medical technologist, and later worked at the National Institutes of Health. To neighbors and friends, he was courteous, soft-spoken, disciplined. Few knew that he had once stood on the bloodiest beach of D-Day, saving men faster than death could claim them. The Army, meanwhile, moved on. It would take decades before historians began uncovering the full extent of black soldiers' contributions during World War II. Reports from the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion resurfaced evidence of valor long overlooked. Veterans began telling stories that had been buried under decades of neglect. Among them, the tale of Waverly Woodson stood out like a rediscovered relic too extraordinary to ignore. By the 1990s, journalists and military scholars pressed for his recognition. The U.S. Army commissioned a study to review potential racial bias in wartime awards. That investigation confirmed what veterans had always known. Systemic prejudice had blocked many black soldiers from receiving the honors they earned. In 1997, President Bill Clinton finally presented the Medal of Honor to 7 African-American veterans of World War II. Woodson's name was not among them. The nomination file, officials said, could not be found. His widow, Joanne Woodson, continued the fight. She gathered testimonies, reports, and eyewitness accounts, submitting them to Congress and the Pentagon. In 2023, nearly 80 years after D-Day, bipartisan lawmakers once again introduced a bill urging the president to award Waverly Woodson the Medal of Honor posthumously. The evidence was clear, they argued. His heroism had met and exceeded every standard. What was missing was only the recognition. Today, at Normandy American Cemetery, rows of white crosses overlook the same stretch of sand where Woodson bled and worked. His name is not carved among them. He survived the war, but his presence lingers in every story told there. Visitors often pause by the sea, unaware that a black medic once crawled through those waves, carrying men back from the edge of death. The fight for freedom he joined did not end on D-Day. It continued in the long, unfinished struggle for equality, a battle that would take another generation to wage. And yet, through all the years and the silence, his deeds remained undeniable. Because courage leaves a record even when history forgets to write it down. The tide at Omaha Beach no longer runs red. It rolls gently now, washing over relics half, buried in the sand-twisted metal, rusted fragments, and the ghosts of men who never went home. The wind carries no gunfire, only silence. Yet somewhere within that silence lives the memory of a young medic who refused to stop. Waverly Woodson's story is not only about a battle. It is about what endures after the noise fades. His courage existed without promise of reward, without the assurance that anyone would remember. That kind of bravery asks for nothing, yet gives everything. It belongs to those who act not for recognition, but because conscience leaves them no other choice. For historians, Woodson's ordeal at Normandy forces a reckoning. It reminds us that wars are not only fought with weapons, but with ideals, and sometimes those ideals are betrayed by the very institutions sworn to uphold them. The United States fought to defeat tyranny abroad while denying equality at home. In men like Woodson, the contradiction met its quiet defiance. His deeds, unacknowledged by the system, revealed a truth larger than prejudice, that heroism is colorblind, though history was not. To the soldiers he saved, he was simply Doc. To those who served with him, he was proof that discipline and compassion could coexist with unimaginable pain. And to future generations, He stands as a mirror showing how justice delayed can still be justice pursued, if memory refuses to fade. On Normandy's shores, the sea erases footprints each night, but not legacy. Somewhere beyond those waves, Waverly Woodson's courage endures steady, unseen, immortal. The man who saved 200 lives in 30 hours, bleeding and unbowed, asked for nothing. And in that silence lies the purest measure of valor.